Welcome everybody to this webinar this afternoon with the Farm to School Network and the Food Connection team from the University of Kentucky. Gonna have a little introduction here and then I'm gonna turn it over to the Food Connection team. Just a little background on the Kentucky Farm to School Network. We work with partners all across Kentucky to have greater coordination around farm to school activities in Kentucky. So we work with farmers, with school food folks, with teachers. We work with nonprofits, university extension, and all sorts of community partners around farm to school activities in three areas, which are primarily working with cafeterias about serving Kentucky farm fresh foods in cafeterias, also working with school garden activities and ag education activities. So trying to get those things going on in classrooms. And so one of our great partners that we work with is the Food Connection at University of Kentucky, and I asked them to join in talking about their efforts around developing value chains for supplying UK dining services and their local procurement efforts, and how our K-12 schools can benefit from those developments. So I am going to turn it over now to Ashton Potter. I'm going to stop sharing.
Perfect. Thanks, Lori. We are so thrilled to be with you all this afternoon. You can see my slides okay, Lori? Just want to confirm.
Yes, looks good.
Perfect. Awesome. So I'm Ashton Potter. I'm the Executive Director of the Food Connection. I'm also the Director of Local Food Systems for the UK Cooperative Extension Network. And I am joined by my two colleagues, Brady Button-Johnson, our West Kentucky Value Chain Coordinator, and Bo Milburn, our Central Kentucky Value Chain Coordinator. We are currently hiring for our East Kentucky position. So we do have a trio of folks working on our team, but hope to have that position in place by the first of the year. So with that, we will just dive right in. Make sure. There we go. So today we're just going to quickly provide you a little bit of an overview of the Food Connection, who we are, what we do, specifically our Kentucky Value Chain Collaborative, and what we do, how we can help support farmers and K-12 schools and other interested buyers. We'll introduce you to our team and our regions. I'm going to provide just a little bit of background on the UK dining contract, which is kind of fundamental to the existence of the Food Connection and the work that we do. And then we are going, Bo will talk a little bit about some lessons learned. I'll share with that and segue into kind of some lessons learned we've had from UK over the last 10 years of getting more Kentucky grown food onto campus and the supply chains that have been opened up to all purchasers of food, in particular K through 12 schools. And then we'll share a few success stories from the field. There are many, but we wanted to highlight a few that have been really robust in the K through 12 space. And Lori, feel free to chime in at any point, and we hope to definitely save some time for questions and answers from the participants at the end. So we'll move along here. So for those of you who don't know, the Food Connection was started in 2014 as a part of the UK dining contract, or the university's contract with its dining service provider, Aramark. So prior to 2014, UK dining was self-operated, so they employed their own food service personnel and chef and procured their own food. And in 2014, they moved to a private service contract. As a part of that move, there was significant discussion both on and off campus about the values that should be reflected in a land grant institution's contractual relationship with a food service provider and what impact that mission should have on our local food and farm economy. And so as a result of those dynamic and spirited conversations, the university ended up with a 15-year contract with Airmark that had explicit local procurement KPIs, or key performance indicators, with financial penalties. So this is significant because many of you may know lots of purchasers, not just in Kentucky, but beyond, have a intention or a stated interest in procuring local food. But from our vantage point, you're going to hear me say this more than one time. If it's not in the contract, it is harder to enforce it. And so we were really, this contract is super unique, nationwide, and we try to leverage those lessons learned to help other institutions procure local food. So also as a part of the contract, Aramark said, okay, we'll adhere to these key performance indicators and purchase Kentucky Farm and Food Business Impact food, but we need help doing that. We're a global food service company, and so they set aside some funding for an applied food systems center that would be focused on leveraging the land grant mission of teaching, research, and outreach for broader local food systems development and support of UK dining in their local procurement efforts. So the Food Connection was born in about a little over a decade ago. So our mission is to serve farmers, food producers, students, and our broader Kentucky community by supporting the development of vibrant and equitable local food system in Kentucky by supporting our land grant mission. And we have several programs that we offer through the Food Connection, but the one that we're going to focus on today is the Kentucky Value Chain Collaborative that is about 2.5 years old. So in the spring of 2022, 23, we hired 3 value chain coordinators to work, one in West Kentucky, one in Central Kentucky, and one in East Kentucky, to work together as a network, but also to provide one-on-one technical assistance to farmers and food businesses who are interested in exploring new market opportunities. And specifically, we are really focused on kind of wholesale market channels, I would say. So a little bit beyond direct to consumer. So we work with buyers in the K-12 space, in the university and college space, hospitals, restaurants, retailers, food service management companies at arenas and other institutions. And so really the goal behind these positions is to help increase connectivity and transparency, and build capacity for what I refer to as the soft infrastructure of our local food system. So we all know we need on-farm infrastructure, and we need trucks on the road and cold storage. But what I feel really passionate that we also need people power, helping to build those relationships and help be translators, if you will, between farmers and buyers and all of the supply chain actors in between. And so really the VCC teams connects farmers and buyers. They identify new market opportunities. They also work really hard to identify gaps in either production, processing, aggregation, distribution, procurement, and try to come up with creative solutions to address those gaps and convene partners as appropriate. We are kind of experts in market channels and relationship building, but we also a big role of the VCC team is to be connectors and conveners. We're really fortunate in Kentucky to have a lot of technical assistance providers who are supporting our local food system. Community Farm Alliance, which Lori represents, is one of those great partners. And so we are really trying to make sure that we're increasing coordination, fostering collaboration, and preventing duplication among our partners. And so just a little bit about the team. You can see kind of the reach the team has had since in about 2.5 years. We've reached about 140 farms in over 50 counties and generated at least $2.5 million. That's of June. So that number is going to increase a bit when we do our end of year numbers, but generated at least $2 million in new farm sales for Kentucky producers across all those market channels. And we are funded by both the Kentucky Agricultural Development Board as well as the UK Cooperative Extension Service. So you'll hear from Brandy and Bo in just a little bit, but I mentioned the West, Central, and East regions. We are using the Extension Administrative regions to carve up our state. We know that some counties don't identify with those regions, but Brandy covers the West region, Bo is in our Central region, and then we are again in process of hiring our new East Kentucky Value Chain Coordinator very soon. So if you're in one of those counties, please feel free to reach out to you can reach out to me or your designated VCC for assistance. And I should say we do work, if it wasn't clear, we work with farmers. We also work with buyers. So I think we have a mix of both on the call. And we also work with middle supply chains. So we really want to be a resource for everyone. So I'm going to dive in a little bit to a little bit more about the dining contract and kind of what, and I'm going to try to be brief because I want Bo and Brandy to have plenty of time to chat. But something that's been really important to the UK dining contract is this idea of metrics and KPIs, key performance indicators, and the importance of defining those metrics. What do we mean by local? So local, the word local means different things to different people, and that's okay. A lot of people like to have a food miles definition or a county definition, but the only thing food miles really accurately measures, I don't love food miles as a metric because it just measures how far it's traveling from the vendor, right? Not necessarily the producer to the market. And so UK dining is a perfect example of why language matters. So when the contract was first written in 2014 with UK dining, we had two metrics of local. We were defining Kentucky Proud, which many of you know means grown and or processed in Kentucky. So it could mean farm impact. It could mean just made in Kentucky. And so that's a little bit broad and a little bit could be refined. The definition of local that they were using at the time was if that business was located in Fayette County or the contiguous counties. And so, if many of you, if you were paying attention around that time, there were several newspaper articles written about UK is counting Coke and ice, Coca-Cola and ice as local food. And that wasn't the intent of the contract on either party, but given these loose metrics and definitions of local, we have a Coca-Cola bottling plant in Fayette County, right? And so they were tracking that business zip code to Fayette County and counting that in the local spend. And so my predecessor, Lillian Brislin, worked really hard with Airmark here on campus and also some national thought leaders in the farm to institution space to kind of come up with some standardized, harmonized metrics that could be used nationwide that really looked at, instead of looking at a vendor level, we're going to really drill down and look at the item level that we're purchasing. So the ground beef patty or the tomato versus who's selling the university or Airmark that tomato or that ground beef. And so we're classifying every item that comes to campus. Every item that comes to campus gets assigned both a farm impact a score and a business impact score. So is it majority, some, or no farm impact? Is it a Kentucky-owned business, a Kentucky-located processor, or no business impact? And I can drill down. I can spend a lot of time on this, but my point here is that definitions matter, and it's important to know what we're talking about when we're sourcing local food. And so just for reference here, sorry, my window's in the way here. Let me move it out of the way. We publish kind of a scorecard of sorts for UK dining every year. Our most recent report came out a couple of months ago for the FY25 academic year. The targets that that UK dining was intended to meet are here on the left. So we track again farm impact purchases and business impact purchases separately. You can see the targets, and then you can see UK dining drastically exceeded those goals, which is really great. And here's a breakdown. I'm not going to go into all these numbers, but also a key thing to note here, FY24 last fiscal year was the first year to where the KPI shifted a little bit. It was a dollar amount from the first year of the contract, the first 10 years of the contract. There were specific dollar amounts in terms of farm impact and business impact purchases UK dining had to meet every year. Last year, it moved to 20% of the total food and beverage spend had to be from Kentucky farms and food businesses. And so this $7 million in actual spend represents actually more like 47% total spend versus 20%, which was mandated by the contract. So you'll see they're drastically exceeding those benchmarks, which is really good. And those are things that we're trying to the supply chains that we've developed for UK dining are really trying to help bring more Kentucky food into the system through distributors and other partners. So just quickly here, some common challenges for local sourcing that are kind of writ large, but I'll try to drill down for K through 12 and then specifically. In general, it can be a challenge to match consistent supply with consistent demand, and that's a lot of what we try to do as value chain coordinators is try to translate. We talk to buyers, we're trying to understand how much food they're purchasing, how much of that food could be redirected to Kentucky sources, and then getting buyers to kind of commit. There's really no contracts in this local food game, but forecasting and trying to predict their purchasing that we can then help translate to farmers so that farmers can have a predictable market for some of these market channels. Pricing can be a challenge. It doesn't have to be a challenge. We hear that a lot, that local food's too expensive. It doesn't have to be. But I will say of the markets, K through 12 schools can be quite price sensitive, just given their budget, the realities of their budget situations, and that they have very little to spend per meal, per kid. And that's kind of a broader federal issue. We would love for it to be more, but what the BCC team and the Farm to School Network do is try to help identify Kentucky farm products that are a good fit, that either are in season and can be price competitive for K through 12 schools. We have a lot of experience working both with and around prime vendors. So a prime vendor, these food service contract companies like Airmark have preferred vendors that they need to purchase food from. And so a lot of times farmers can't have that direct relationship with a college or university because of the food needs to flow through these preferred distributors. And so we work really hard to get more Kentucky farm food on those trucks of our distribution partners so that they can be selling into the pipeline. And a couple of those that we're going to talk about today that Bo's going to share with you what chefs want and are sometimes referred to as creation gardens and then Clem's refrigerated food happen to be two suppliers for UK dining, but they also service the K through 12 market. And so those are the two distributors. They certainly aren't the only distributors working in the state, but they have been two really key partners of ours in really committing to and caring about Kentucky farm food. And so we're really grateful to them. So sometimes growers are hesitant to work with a distributor. They'd rather go direct. We certainly understand that and are going to try to advocate for that when we can. But the K through 12 school market can be a challenge because a lot of districts often expect, and Brady will go into this a little bit in some, maybe her example, is that school districts, no matter how big or how small, most of them expect individual delivery to each school. And that's just not something that's realistic for a lot of farmers, particularly in larger or more rural counties where, as the crow flies, it may not be far, but you're going to spend your whole day delivering, and that may not be worth your while. So labor and equipment can also be a challenge, both on farm, cold storage, finding adequate labor. We aren't necessarily experts in those areas, but we certainly can connect you with partners who can help add capacity or help you write grants to support some of those purchases on the farm. So that's kind of not the bad news, but some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that we have seen at UK Dining that can translate into the K through 12 market. Obviously, I've said it before, but our contractual obligation, UK Dining's contractual obligation to purchase from Kentucky farmers and having the support of a food system center is really had been a really important driver of the local food spend at Kentucky at UK, and we have tried to leverage that. So contracts are important, and so we try to use that to lobby other institutions to include specific, measurable local food purchasing language in their food service contracts. Two that we've been successful with advocating for: Kentucky State University, our sister land grant in Frankfort, recently engaged in a new food service contract as of August 1 of this year, and they have key performance indicators around local. It's very similar language to UK's, and so we're very excited. Bo's working closely with them, the new team on the ground there, to get them rolling with some of the items, again, that are already in the pipeline through UK. Several years ago, we were also successful in getting Central Bank Center in Lexington that's attached the convention center as it's attached to Rep Arena. They also have some less strong language, but nonetheless there is language there, and we are trying to work there. And so we understand everybody can't have a contract, but we really think that's a really great strategy to advocate for explicit contractual language when possible. I alluded to forward contracting and forecasting earlier. That's something that UK Dining does that K through 12 schools can do, and some do better than others, is sit down either in the winter or beginning of the summer to plan for the upcoming academic year, to think about what local foods they can incorporate so that they can give farmers enough lead time to make those seed selection choices, planning for animals, etc. Another creative solution that UK has employed that's been successful for them is committing to whole animals, both beef and pork. They've done, and that gets them a better price point per pound. It also helps the farmer out and the processor out, knowing that the whole animal is committed. That could be an avenue. I understand that might not be realistic for all K through 12 schools, but certainly is an option. I think the secret sauce, if you will, is that I like to share with folks, and I think this can particularly work at K through 12 schools, is the idea of price blending, right? A lot of people think, K through 12 schools may think, gosh, I buy so much chicken, there's no way that a Kentucky farmer can supply all my chicken needs at the price point I need. But it's not an all or nothing approach. And so we really try to advocate for buyers to think about dedicating a certain amount. So UK, for example, buys 1,000 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken breast a week. There isn't a small to mid-scale grower that we work with that can supply that at the price point they need. But instead, UK said, well, how much? We talked to the farm. Farm said I could reasonably provide 300 pounds of boneless, skinless breast a week. Will that work? And so UK Dining said, yep, we'll just buy all from you that you can take at this price point, and then we'll buy the other 700 pounds from a commodity source, and then blend that price so that on their P&L, the price looks a little bit more manageable. And so that can be applied to tomatoes, to salad mix, to just about any item. But we really try to get folks to think about blending local and commodity, particularly from the buyer standpoint, to make it the price point work for and the volume work for them. We also would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Kentucky Proud Buy Local program. It's a incentive program that incentivizes buyers, including K through 12 schools, to purchase from Kentucky sources. It provides a rebate back in the form of, Lori can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's at 15% for direct farm impact purchases, gold purchases. And so that can really help the bottom line as well for K through 12 schools. So that's enough for me. I'm going to kick it over to Bo to talk a little bit about some of the unique products that we've been able to add to the supply chain for UK Dining, again, that are available to everyone, including K through 12 schools.
Great. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Bo Milburn. I am the Central Kentucky Value Chain Coordinator. I've only been in this position for a few months, so I can't take credit for any of the good stories and stuff that you're going to learn today. But I want to talk a little bit about this work in its application with some specific examples. So I'm going to try and be concise and give you an overview of a few kind of intermediaries that we partner with and collaborate with to help us address some of those barriers and challenges that Ashton had mentioned before. Just three folks who are able to help us achieve the volumes, consistency, kind of logistical distribution, and some of the food safety standards that are necessary. So first we'll get into what chefs want, which is a family-owned business that was founded and is still headquartered in Kentucky. They deliver and distribute to the whole state, really the region. They have hubs in Lexington, Bardstown, Bowling Green. Their headquarters is in Louisville, and then they have a prep kitchen in Cincinnati. They participate in the DoD Fresh program, DoD Fresh Fruit and Vegetable program that allows schools to purchase Kentucky Farm Impact products with their USDA dollars. It requires an additional interface login, but in the next slide, I'll talk to you a little bit about some of those specific products that are available there. But outside of the DoD Fresh program, they also have commercial accounts that have really vast offerings for Kentucky Farm Impact products. And these are a few slides that I pulled from their presentation that can show you kind of an overview of what that process is like. But the next slide has a snapshot, I think, of their farm to school month DoD fresh product sales. So from 2024 to 2015, I'm sorry, from 2024 to 2025, they went from 4 to 15 Kentucky sourced vendors that you can see on the right side. So these are the farms that they were able to access those products from for the DoD Fresh program. And then on the left, we got a list of all the products specifically that were available and the dollar sales that they were able to help those organizations out with. But separate from the DoD Fresh program, if we click to the next slide, we've got their local newsletter list that shows what's available now weekly. So if you see, the first page is products that are available on the DoD Fresh program, but there's an additional 12 pages past this for what's available from commercial accounts. So it's really anything from dairy, they have milk and yogurt and cheeses, to meats. There's chicken, pork, Kentucky beef available. They have products that are available seasonally that line up, with Kentucky's growing season, but also have products that are frozen that you can access year round. The final slide is just an example of those other products that aren't included in the DoD Fresh program, but are still, good fits for schools. And it's really robust. They offer a lot. So it's been very helpful. The next collaborator we work with that Ashton mentioned is Clem's Refrigerated Foods. They are located in Lexington, pretty close to campus, and offer a lot of great products as well. I think my favorite thing about Clem's is they have great in-person customer service. If you want to place an order, you have to pick up the phone and talk to a human or shoot them an email. And if you have a problem, getting that troubleshot by a real person is very helpful. But they also have the proteins, but also frozen off the cob corn, mozzarella, and dried Kentucky pinto beans, which is an interesting one. From there, we have Custom Food Solutions, which is a large-scale food production company that is headquartered in Louisville, and they produce large volume prepared foods. So you're thinking like soups, sauces, fillings. If it was a filling for a chicken pot pie, the folks in the Food Connection before I came along collaborated with Custom Food Solutions and were able to use Kentucky Impact ingredients like tomatoes and dairy, Kentucky flour, Kentucky beef that they could incorporate into those large volume processed foods that could be served on campus. Lastly, I think the dream scenario would be a direct farm relationship for schools. You have to consider specific organization capacity, their ability to deliver it to you. There are more variables, but it is certainly possible. And I think Brandy has lots of examples of success stories of how that really works well.
Thanks, Bo. We'll kick it over to Brandy to share some of those success stories, and feel free to start thinking about questions you have for us. I've been trying to monitor the chat, but if you want to drop questions in the chat, we'll get to those in just a few minutes. Brandy?
Okay, can you all hear me good?
Yep.
Okay. I apologize. I'm on the road today doing a farm visit in far western Kentucky, so I had to find a place to stop with service. So the success stories that I'll share are ones that I started whenever I joined the team at the Food Connection. And one of the things that VCC does a lot of is relationship building. So I started where I knew I had relationships and went to Barron County Schools. That's where I went to school, and I knew the food service director there, and I met with her. and talk to her, just sit and listen. So I think 98% of what I do a lot of times is just listen. Told her what a value chain coordinator was supposed to be doing and just asked, what is it that you all would like to do? What are you doing? Why haven't you been successful at doing what it is that you want to do? And what does that look like to you? And what came out of those conversations, they kept going back to, we could do stuff in our cafeteria, and we've tried that before, but we do this summer feeding program that we would really love to see, since it's the summer, vegetables and fruits that are in that program coming from Kentucky farmers. And their definition of local at the time was statewide. And they were getting a lot of stuff that was coming off of a truck, the same one that they would use for school days. But what they wanted to see was ideally to transition some of the servings that's required by the USDA for those summer feeding programs, at least partially be from local farmers. So looked over a list of what it is that they were currently paying for those products, and then asked them, well, what do you think is the reason why that hasn't been successful? And it all came back to some of the things that Ashton was talking about. We don't feel like that there are local farmers that have the volume we need. We've talked to people in the past, but they're not willing to deliver to all 11 schools. They'll say they have stuff, but they don't realize the volume that's actually necessary for these summer bags. And so I started looking over what they were paying for stuff versus farmers that I'd worked with in the area, and went and talked to the producers in the area and discussed with them, these are the things that they need in order for this to work. They need to know that you can grow the volume that they need. They need to know that you're consistent with that being available every week, and they need to know that you can distribute to all of their sites, which narrowed it down to 3 farmers that felt comfortable saying that they could commit to doing what it was that they wanted. So then I went back to them, and we were discussing what ideally is the price point that you're looking for. And of course, based off of what they paid, what was coming off the truck, nothing was going to match up. But once we had conversations about why that it would cost more coming from a local farm, and the infrastructure and the equipment and the investment that those farms have, and that they don't have the same overhead, it was able to start a conversation and them to care and want to build a relationship with those farmers. And going back to the farmers and discussing, what is the price point that you need? But also with the USDA, the serving size for that program is 5 cups of fruits and vegetables. So 2.5 cups could be of one thing, 2.5 cups could be another, whatever the combination could be, it had to equal 5 cups. And so I came up with, well, if I can convince them that there are farmers that can provide for this and that are willing to distribute, and they are worried about, the restrictions that they have to meet as far as cup servings and all of that, I just started doing research of what does that look like? What does green pepper translate into cup servings? And then it was a proposal that I made of different options based on the seasonality of, okay, well, I know that Farmer A said that they would be planting these things, and this is what they'd have available in June, and this is what they'd have available in July. And we can have these different options, a few different options of what could be in those different week servings, and presented that to the food service director. And I think that's when they realized, like, well, she's really serious about this, and she's not going to leave us alone about it. And we came to an agreement to do a trial run with those 3 farmers the first year. And 2 of those farmers said, we can't do all of the bags. We don't have the volume or the labor or the infrastructure because when you're talking about that type of volume, it was 3,600 5-cup servings, because there was 3,600 families signed up for this program. And when you're talking about that volume, that's in reality, when you're out there and you're actually harvesting, and then you have to find a place to store it, and then you have to actually bag it and all of these things, because that was a request from the school system. We need it bagged so that we can hand it to the families. Those were all the conversations back and forth where there were two farms that said we can't provide all of them, but we could do one school or we could do two schools. And then one farmer that said we could do all, but if there's other farmers that are wanting to do it as well, we'll do whatever they can't do. And so it's a lot of conversations in community because none of this happens in a vacuum. It's that coordination and being able to talk to each other. One concern the school system had was, well, if they get something different at one school, parents might get upset that they didn't get what was available at the other school. And so we had that conversation and kind of got all the farmers on the same page about what it was that they were going to grow. And so the first year they were a little hesitant because one farmer one week was like, we don't have cucumbers and tomatoes, we got cabbage. And they're like, that will never work. Nobody's going to eat cabbage. But then they found that people were posting on social media. That's what that picture is, about how much they enjoyed what they were getting out of the bags and what they did with it, which then led to last year there being a whole marketing campaign where they were getting pictures from the farmers that were providing for the bag program and then putting recipes with stuff. That's what the corn picture is there. So the whole first year, it was just kind of a trial run. By the second year, they had so many people and families that were excited about what they were getting that they actually were reaching out to the farmers. Can you send us a picture of you all harvesting this stuff so we can put it up and put it with a recipe? And the farmers were at different scales. So you see the one in the middle there, was a smaller scale farmer. So that's how he distributed what he could and for the one school that he had. But then the far right, they said, we'd love to do watermelon, but we've never had a producer that was able to bring us watermelon in a way that we can hand it out because we can't unload 3,600 watermelons. We don't have the staff for that. So the farmer said, well, we have a skid steer and we're happy to bring that with us and unload one box at a time, put it where they need to in the line. That way they can just pick it up and hand it to the people. So it was those conversations that were started because of just meeting with them and asking, okay, what is it that you need? And then talking to the producers about what they need. And so they're going into their third year now, and it's been extremely successful, not just for the farmers, but for the school system and for those families that are getting those meals. They really look forward to the fresh Kentucky grown produce that they're getting. The second year, they did say, hey, we would like to stop doing it. We would like it all from Barron County. That's what we would love to have. And that we have not accomplished yet because there are not enough that grow it at the volume or have the capacity in Barron County to do what it is that they need. And those are the conversations that have to be had. It's just that education piece. Next slide. So it did lead to them deciding that, well, if summer bags are this successful and you were able to find people that have that volume, we would like to increase what we do in our cafeteria. And they had in the past just tried to go what we would call the easy button route and use products that were available through their distributors that were Kentucky proud. But they said, we've done that one day a year. We have a farm to cafe meal and we use the different products that we can get. But we would like to see that transition into the entire meal being locally sourced and working with farmers that are in this area. And so a little at a time that has grown from 1 to 2 farmers being who they purchase from and a little over $25,000 to this past year, they were sourcing from about 12 to 15 farmers. And that increase, that's an old number there. When I was getting records back in May of 570%, they've actually had their fall farm to cafe meal. And so they've increased their spending about 710% at this point in the last 2.5 years. So their most recent, they're doing 2 farm to cafe days a year now, and I put that chart in there with the numbers so that people can see just the impact that one meal, buying that one item from that one farmer, is a huge financial impact for a farm family. And it's allowed them to do more with their FFA and their ag students there and encourage education in the classroom and students looking at agriculture as a career, and to hire a farm to school coordinator at this point with the justification that this is something they want to continue to invest in. So the most recent farm to cafe meal in September is that plate on the bottom in the center there, and everything that was in that meal was locally sourced down to the hamburger bun, from someone in Allen County, and the pumpkin cookie that they had for dessert. So that one in the top right corner was the spring farm to cafe meal, where they were sourcing what they could that was available at that time, but they really wanted to go hard with this fall one and get as much possible from the regional area. Okay, next slide. Another success story from the Western Kentucky region, and I feel like I have no ownership in this whatsoever. This was something that was already started, and I just got to be a part of as the Western Kentucky Value Chain Coordinator. Michelle and Nathan Howe that own Need More Acres Farm. In my position that I had before this, I helped with a small local nonprofit that did the farmers market in Barron County. And so Michelle and I talked a lot because of her work with the farmers market in Bowling Green. And we would share ideas, and I would basically, she was a mentor in starting programs for our market. But she had a unique relationship with Bowling Green City Schools because of the work that she and Nathan were doing with the health department in Allen County. And it's a fascinating story about, just relationships and the importance of those relationships. So the relationship that they had with the health department led to them being, Dahl Emerson at Bowling Green City Schools being interested in speaking with her. And it all started with a conversation on her front porch on the swing of, you're providing a lot of meals already for students of mine that you don't realize because they receive the services through the health department. And so I would like to provide them with that nutrition as well during the school year, but also during our summer meals program. And they developed this relationship that not only incorporated Need More Acres produce into the Bowling Green City School system and their summer meal program, but a lot of family farms and smaller farms that didn't necessarily have the volume needed, but Need More Acres could aggregate from those and distribute for them. So that's a good example of people working together, what their strengths and their infrastructure encompasses, and it benefiting multiple farmers. And so that's led into now every year there are thousands of students from Bowling Green City Schools that there's a whole week dedicated to them going out on field trips to Need More Acres, learning about farming, seeing where their food comes from. And it was a really cool project that they did together. The book that's up there to the left about let's go to the watermelon farm, because Dalla had all these students asking about, where is this watermelon farmer? If I'm eating this watermelon, where is it coming from? And why can't I see the farm? And I want to go. And it's an awesome book. You can buy it on Amazon if but the illustrations show the kids and Dalla and the farmers and the different ways that plants grow and the life cycles of the different foods that they eat. And so just recently, Bowling Green City Schools received one of the fruit and vegetable grants to continue growing on their impact in purchasing from local farmers. And that relationship I have with Michelle was instrumental in me being introduced to Dalla when I started this position, and then being able to work with her and her being very clear about the farmers that she works with, and she's happy with what she has. But doing that listening thing again and saying, okay, well, if there is anything that you would like to see, or that that's not worked in the past, that I could possibly keep an ear to the ground about. And that's led to their high school having a cafe that serves locally sourced baked goods that are made with Kentucky farm products. The same person that made the hamburger buns for Barron County schools makes blueberry scones and different items that she's aggregating local product from different farmers to incorporate into those meals.
Brandy, I can talk about this example real quick because it's an organization that I volunteered with for a few years.
Thank
But
you.
um, there is a nonprofit in Lexington called Food Chain. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it, but they collaborated with Central Kentucky Independent School to help with their food service capacity. So Food Chain is a nonprofit that deals with food education and access in the community. They have a couple of teachers and education staff as part of their organization. They went to the school and they have curriculum that allow the students to develop a few new menu items for their cafeteria. They were able to use different ingredients and build a smoothie cup that I think the food service folks smuggled some spinach into, but they played around with different ingredients, like, decided on one that they all really liked, and then Food Chain went back and kind of scaled it out in freezer bags so that the food service folks could dump it into a blender and make it in like a small cup for each of the kids. The students took cooking classes and learned how to chop safely a butternut squash. And then Food Chain took them all back. They pureed them, turned them into frozen biscuits, butternut squash biscuits that the food service folks could just crack open and bake from frozen. They expressed that they had a lot of these, like number 10 canned green beans that the kids weren't eating. So they collaborated with the food service folks and made a cream of mushroom soup with Kentucky dairy, Kentucky mushrooms, froze it in bags so that they could thaw it, mix it in with these green beans that the kids weren't eating, add some good crunchy things on top, and get them to eat the green beans that they were always passing. But I thought that this was a good example of how you can make small incremental changes with engagement of students and have a significant impact. And the expectation doesn't have to be, going from zero to fully scratch, but there are partners in the community that can help make small steps that do have a significant impact for folks.
Awesome. Well, I'll wrap it up here and we'll take some time, hopefully some time for questions, but I hope you all have seen some creative examples of how to make local sourcing work, both from a university perspective, but more importantly, K through 12 perspective. And these values of Kentucky grown food are something that we try to always talk about when we're talking to buyers. And Brandy alluded to this when she was breaking down, talking to the food service director in Barron County about how those small changes were really what's behind that cost, right? And so your money is staying locally if you're choosing to purchase with Kentucky farmers and Kentucky food businesses, and those farmers and food businesses are then able to reinvest that money locally. And it creates this really nice sense of culture and community. So we're creating a more connected local food system where, students know where their watermelon's coming from and know where their corn is coming from. It hopefully, if we're doing our job right, it's creating more jobs on the farm because we're hoping that, again, by creating these additional market opportunities for farmers, that they're able to either quit their off-farm job or hire additional labor to meet the needs of those increased market demands. Healthy land and continuing to take care, steward the land. The dwindling farmland that we have in our state is really important. We're helping to promote, biological diversity and, again, land stewardship. And purchasing food directly from business. So that's a little bit about how we like to view things and how we're trying to talk about the many benefits of Kentucky grown food. So this is our contact information. I am going to stop screen sharing, and if it's okay with Lori, we'll open it up for questions. Is that okay? I'll double check the chat here to make sure we don't have any. Anything you want to add, Lori, too, while we're waiting on questions to chime in? Feel free to come off mute if you want to ask a question or raise your hand. We'll try to do that, or feel free to drop it in the chat. But Lori, anything you'd like to add from your farm to school experience?
Yeah, I understand all those challenges, and want to emphasize that there's no one right way to do a farm to school. For some school systems, they really need to be able to work with a distributor partner. It's not going to happen if it's not going through a distributor. And for other school systems, they have a lot more flexibility. They have fewer schools and can really work direct purchasing from farmers and and combinations of those work too. So maybe some products can be direct purchases, but other products there's not anybody who can deliver locally, and but they can come from another part of Kentucky. So
Great
and
point.
it's not all or nothing either. It can start small and like Brandy pointed out, even one meal can be the income from that can be a big difference for a small farm. So small changes can make big impacts.
Absolutely. I don't see any questions in the chat. Don't be shy. I see many friends and familiar faces on the call. We'd love to hear. Yeah.
Or just speak up if you got a question.
Yeah. Not here. Oh, yeah. Jake, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jake Bowman. I'm with Sustainably Fresh. Ashton, just a quick question. I'm seeing a lot of push for regenerative agriculture, especially in the retail and wholesale markets. And I saw in the last slide you were talking about, soil health. Is there a push for this in the school nutrition space as well?
That's a great question. I would love to be able to say yes, but I don't know that I can reliably say that. I think my experience, and certainly my team or Lori, feel free to jump in. What I am seeing is more on, honestly, the economic benefit. Buyers are interested because they want to support their neighbors or their, local communities. I think, our team certainly values those regenerative practices, but we also work with farmers of all shapes and sizes who use all different shapes of practices. And so, to me, it feels like a direct market, like a farmer's market, a CSA, or a retail environment are probably going to be, that's going to be a better avenue to reflect those values than food service. But I'd love for somebody to prove me wrong. So, Lori, do you have any additional feedback there?
I think supporting local farms has somewhat the effect of closer to the land management practices than what schools might get through a distributor that's coming from much larger scale industrial farming practices. So in a backdoor kind of way, I think that is there somewhat big.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And that makes sense because where I do get concerned, because I work with a lot of small family farms, is that I don't necessarily want to put a label on it, because then once we put a label on it, then that could be a slippery slope. But I am very optimistic with the market because I would like to see proving that soil health makes food more nutritious. So increasing the nutrient density, the nutrient diversity, the energy, from the food we're consuming. That's where I think that I would like to see it go. But again, I don't want it to be something that's going to be a barrier for the small family farms by any means.
Good point. Thanks for that. Other questions, comments? All right. Well, we sincerely hope if you aren't connected with our value chain team or the Kentucky Farm to School Network, to please reach out to us. We'd love to get to know you, or if you have an idea about a school district to approach, or a farmer we should be working with, or a farmer who needs support, we'd love to connect. So, Lori, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks. We've recorded this session today. It's going to be available on the YouTube channel for the Kentucky Farm to School Network, and I really want to thank the Food Connection team for enthusiastically saying, yes, let's talk about UK dining and what it means for K-12 schools. So thank you all, and we look forward to staying in touch about local food system development in Kentucky. Appreciate.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you.